Well, welcome everybody. Sorry for the little mix-up. The reason why we have you all on mute is just because, as you could tell, somebody's phone rang, and it will any sort of background noise, and Zoom picks it up, and nobody can hear what's going on. But we're looking forward to having a conversation with you. We know that at least a couple of you have been involved in this process, so you probably have a lot of familiarity, but we do have some new faces. And so first I want to welcome everybody. My name is Gladys Cornell and I'm with AIM Consulting. AIM is assisting the district with stakeholder and public engagement for this effort. This is our third meeting. We had an earlier meeting a few weeks ago. It's the same information we're sharing, but we just felt like it was probably a good idea. We did send out, just for everybody's knowledge, we did send out postcards to everybody, to all residents within the district's area of responsibility. So everybody received 2 postcards, one for the first meeting and then this one. And then we did follow up with those that we had emails for with a quick notification just to let folks know about this meeting. So again, thank you so much for joining us. The purpose of this meeting is that we would like to share sort of what's going on with the assessment. We will provide some background information about the Paradise Valley Maintenance and Monitoring Districts for those of you who may not have as much knowledge or information about what the district does for you as a resident. So we will share that information, and then we will get into the services provided and how the assessment works. As I mentioned, we put you on mute, but we do want to hear from you. So there's a couple of ways you can engage with us. If you want, you're more than welcome to use the chat box. It's at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a computer, it looks like pretty well, I don't know about a couple of the people, but if you are on a computer, it's at the bottom of your screen. You'll see an icon that says chat. Just click that and it'll open up, and you can add your comments or your questions there, and we'll definitely review them and answer any questions that you may have. If you're on a phone, it's the chat is in the more button. You just click you click that, and it'll pop up a screen that says you can raise your hand or chat. You can click the chat and you can share your comments there. If you're on a tablet, it's the same location, the more button, and the same thing happens. So we also, if you'd like and you'd like to ask questions, then we would ask that you raise your virtual hand. What that'll do is it'll pop you up on our screen so that we know that you want to ask a question, and then we will unmute you and you can ask your question. Also, after the meeting, if you'd like, you're more than welcome to email at the pvmmd@fairfield.ca.gov, or you can call the number 707-428-7485, and Angelica will put those 2 things in the chat box so you can have access to it there. With any additional comments or questions, you might have an aha moment after you've logged off. I do that sometimes, and so yeah, feel free to utilize that email or the phone number to share your thoughts. Okay, so with that, I'll do some quick introductions, and then we'll go right into the presentation. We'll have time for question and answer, and then we'll let you know how you can stay involved as the district progresses with the effort. Yeah, so we will do our best to get you out of here as quickly as possible, because I know probably some of you would probably like to see that Warriors game. So we will try to get you out as quickly as possible. So who's here tonight? Ryan Panganiban, I don't know why I always stumble over your name. He's the district engineer for Paradise Valley Monitoring and Maintenance District. Eric Harrell is with NGO, and he is the principal geologist who will be providing the presentation. Assisting him is Haley Ralston, and she is a staff geologist with NGO. And then assisting me is Angelica Williams with AIM Consulting. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ryan to give a little background on the district.
Thanks, Gladys. And as Gladys alluded to, thank you everyone for joining us this evening and spending a few moments to hear more about the Paradise Valley Maintenance and Monitoring District. Some of this information may be new to some of you, but there again, it may be a repeat. So bear with me as I try to go through these slides. So the Paradise Valley Maintenance and Monitoring District is a geological hazard abatement district. And here is a geographic area of the district. The area is located in the northern limits of the city, nestled within the hillside. The area is less than a quarter mile away from the Paradise Valley golf course. And this black line, it denotes the district boundary area. So it's about 280 residential units, and it encompasses approximately 88 acres. It's also worth noting that the district owns the open space area above the homes, and with that ownership, it comes with a different set of risks and liabilities. Next slide. So a geological hazard abatement district is created to finance the prevention, mitigation, abatement, and control of geological hazards. Our district, the Paradise Valley Maintenance and Monitoring District, was formed in July of July 6th, 2010, and it is a state authorized independent agency. So a geological hazard is defined as an actual or threatened landslide, land movement, or soil erosion caused through an earthquake or fault movement or any natural or unnatural movement of land or earth. So the GAD, what its main purpose is to finance the mitigation or abatement of structures and hazards that are partially or wholly caused by these geological hazards. The geological assessments occur annually and are collected on the property tax. So to maximize our transparency, the funds received for the districts are maintained independent from the city accounts. So the GAD account is separate and apart from the cities. Next slide. So there's a set of formation documents that describes what the district does. These are referenced as the plan of control and the engineer's report. And those describe what the services that we provide for the residents, such as ensuring the drainage infrastructure, the concrete lined ditches have adequate capacity, monitoring the open space area for earth movement or needed grading repairs, and weed abatement. Next slide. So why are we here today? In May of 2020, and it seems a long time ago, the board heard some written protests and concerns about that year's current fiscal year assessment. There's been, over the course of several years, a low annual expenses. However, there's been an increase to the levy and the assessment amount over the years. At that time, there was unspent budget of about $1.2 million of operation expenses. And there was a 2018 reserve study that says that $1.7 million was to be captured for that rainy day fund, to set that aside in the event of events that occur within the district. As of today, that balance is closer to 1.5 million. And that's how much we've collected in the last couple of years. Next slide. So after hearing some of the residents' concerns and feedback from the community, the board asked staff to work with our engineering firm to set an appropriate annual budget, evaluate what a proper reserve goal for the PVMMD would be. And we've embarked on that over the last year. In fact, we started initially with a company, but we determined that NGO was a better fit for us over the course of the last 6 months. So we've been working hard at work with NGO to get this work done. In addition to getting the work with NGO, we've also looked at a couple of other things. We've looked at potentially changing how we are currently structured. So there was a request from the ad hoc committee to evaluate the feasibility of transitioning the responsibilities of the GAD from a local governing agency to a property owner elected board. So after a brief presentation and discussion from staff, The board decided to remain as the governing body, and that is the diagram here at the right. In 2021, we appointed a new district manager, and we've executed, as I alluded to, 2 new contracts with NGO. So the first contract is to right size our staff and kind of augment the day-to-day services that we provide, operations and maintenance with NGO. And then the second contract is to complete a condition assessment of the current district facilities, provide recommendations for an appropriate operation and maintenance budget for this upcoming fiscal year, and update our reserve fund study or a balance analysis. So with that, I want to hand the mic off to Eric, and he could kind of walk through kind of the next steps that we took and walk us through the new plan of control and engineers report.
So thank you very much, Ryan. So just a little bit of background if you're not familiar with our NGO. We've been around for 50 years. Last year, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary. We have a large and diverse engineering, geology, hydrology staff. We're centered right here and have been for our whole history in the Bay Area. Our home office is in San Ramon. And so we've been local here and aware and of the local geology and local conditions for a long time here. So we have a long basis in the Bay Area and a long history as a geotechnical firm here. Next slide. So NGO, as the reason, one of the reasons we were brought on is NGO has been involved with GADS since 1985. We were involved in the first GAD in Northern California for a new development. And we have been managing maintenance on GADS for the last 17 years. So we have 15 GADs that under where we're doing management services for. So we have a lot of experience in the GADs and GAD functioning. So we've short list here of a lot of the GAD, a number of GADs we've been involved with in the area and throughout California. But that's why we were brought in to help with the Paradise Valley GAD. NGO's involvement with the Paradise Valley GAD was first started in 2002, working on establishing the GAD. So we've had a 20-year history with this project. We were involved with the original engineers report and plan of control used to form the GAD. We were also, since that time, we've been since that time, we have provided some monitoring services for the GAD in 2013. We also provided some monitoring services in 2018, along with a reserve study that was mentioned earlier. We were brought on to provide for other documentation as far as the GAD goes, starting near the end December of last year. And I'd like to go through a little bit of what we've been working on since December. Next slide. So the current work that we've been providing for the GAD is the plan of control, a revised engineers report, and a updated reserve study for the GAD. The plan of control, it provides a guidance document for the GAD. It's what's the GAD scope of work, what's it going to do for those within the area of the GAD and for those assessed. So part of the reason we felt that the 2010 plan of control was needed to be updated was to several of at the time the plan of control was adopted, only one of the three developments within the GAD had been built. And so we wanted to now represent the as-built conditions, so what's actually been constructed, and update the GAD plan of control for those. And there also has been, based on the experience of the GAD in the last 12 years, some changes as far as how the GAD maintained improvements have performed. And so we wanted the plan of control to represent that also. Next slide. So what is the GAD doing in Paradise Valley? Its day-to-day responsibilities mostly include improvements within the open space that were constructed to service the GAD. The hills behind the developments have been subject to historically debris flows and landsliding. And so a number of improvements were constructed to provide mitigation for these and to protect the developed areas of the GAD. And so these include a lot of things to control both water and sediment. And these are kind of listed here, and I won't go through them all, but they're, surface drainage improvements, subsurface drainage improvement, and areas to collect sediment and debris when they occur. Next slide. So as Ryan mentioned earlier, the GAD not only provides geologic hazard abatement for the entire open space and developed area, but it also owns the open space. And so as the landowner for the open space, it provides services above and beyond geologic hazard abatement district. And these are items that would be taken by any responsible landowner. And in these cases, it's vegetation management, litter and graffiti removal, and maintenance of fences, signage, and those type of improvements. Next. So when we had a plan of control, you have the scope of what the GAD is going to be doing. Both the improvements that are going to be maintained on a day-to-day basis, but also the emergency response items when landslides, debris flows, flooding, and those type of events occur. So the GAD has to evaluate what it's going to need to adequately fund those functions in perpetuity. So a GAD is going as planned. A GAD will be around as long as the development's there. So these things are set up to run forever, at least as long as the development's there to service the homes and improvements within that development. So what is the reserve study, like I said, was what can the GAD reasonably expect in the decades ahead, and how much needs to be put aside for those events that over the long term will occur. So those are future maintenance monitoring and repair responsibilities. And then it also reserves for unanticipated events such as large landslides, debris flows, movement from large earthquakes that causes earth movement, those type of things. So we looked at all those in the reserve study to come up with an appropriate amount. A GAD is not an insurance vehicle, but a lot of the things that it has to look at, with geologic hazards being expensive to repair but infrequent, we have to look at those and fund it like an insurance vehicle. And so we've done that in part of the plan of control. And the last point on here is, you just did a reserve study in 2018 why are we looking at another one? And, you know, the GAD's been around since 2010. And so another 4 or 5 years of site history allows us to evaluate more the conditions and hone this into what the conditions are now, and also that everything's been built out so we can evaluate all those conditions. Next slide. So the last part of the 3 documents that we've been working on, actually, well, there's more than 3, but the main 3 documents we've been working on are the engineer's report, which establishes a budget, and the initial engineer's report establishes an assessment limit for the GAD. That's how much can be levied against each resident to provide the GAD's plan of control services. And this is, like I said, based on the plan of control scope of services. And again, the question can be asked, you know, why are we looking at this if we had an initial report in 2011 that was approved and NGO worked on? And why do we need an additional thing? And this is, we updated the engineer's report and have been circulating drafts of these to provide for, as things have been built out, to demonstrate the special benefit for each lot within the development. Now that those have all been established, we wanted to provide for the exact as-built conditions in the time that the original plan of control and engineers report were developed. Areas, the Paradise 360 and the Ridge had not been constructed. We knew how many homes maximum could be built in those areas, but we didn't have exact details on where they would be placed and the exact number of units, just the maximum. So we wanted to update for that. We have also, there's been court decisions based on assessments related to GADs, and we wanted to incorporate those into the updated engineer's report. Next slide. So what we've looked at here is to provide for a breakdown of the budget for the GAD. And this does differ from the 2011 engineer's report. In general, the expenses are lower than what we projected in 2011. Part of the reason for that is we put in the reserve study is that conditions haven't been what you would consider normal for this type of development, and just rainfall in general for the period since the GAD was formed. Probably no surprise to anybody that we've been in a long-term rainfall deficit, and a lot of the GAD's activities, not the maintenance activities, those go on regardless of the weather conditions, but a lot of the emergency response hasn't been needed because of the drier conditions, which I think is fortunate because, as any resident out there is well aware, I've walked them after both of the fires, but all the vegetation was removed from all those hillsides twice recently. And so we've been, you know, with the lower rainfall, at least it's reestablished without having a lot of emergency response landslides and debris flows and those type of flooding. So it's been some fortunate conditions, but the site has also performed better than we had anticipated originally. We were aware of some heavy sediment flows and debris flows in the 2006, 2007 years when we were out there looking at the site, but the site has performed better. So we were able to reduce some of these estimated expenses for the GAD in the revised engineer's report. Next. So this just a demonstration, kind of a overview site plan of what the GAD is maintaining and which areas are within the GAD. The green area represents all the areas that the GAD is not only within the district, but the GAD owns. So what we're going to talk about a little bit later, just to point out on this slide, is there's some houses that are parcels that are shaded in blue, which are just at the base of the slope of the hillside. We have, in allocating the assessments, we have provided a different allocation for units that have the potential to be impacted more heavily by the hillside. It's evaluating the special benefit that they receive above and beyond all the other GAD services. But on this slide, just noting that they're, those homes at the base of the hillside when we talk about the allocation of the assessment. So next slide. So thank you. Perfect timing. So what we have here is we had a plan of control that set out what the GAD was going to do. We had a budget that says, how much is that going to cost? And the engineer's report also allocates what special benefit each parcel is receiving. So once you have the budget and the total amount, then you look at how that's divided up here among the different residential types within the development. And these are based on some of the frontage, the kind of average frontage of each house that's along the slope. If they're getting a slope benefit, you'll notice that each of the type have slope benefit are higher, and that's the general case in here. The large homes along the base of the slope are proposed as having the largest assessment. They're receiving the greatest special benefit. The homes that are smaller and away from the slope are receiving the least special benefit from the GAD. And so those assessments are lower. And then everybody else is in between. So that's kind of how you look at this. I'm kind of right now talking about the column that says the fiscal year 2022-2023 assessment. Brian's going to be talking about kind of the fourth column a little bit later, which has the some proposed levies. If the GAD only has maintenance and operations, it only takes in money to fund the maintenance and operations in the next fiscal year. Because one of the things, as Ryan talked about, the GAD has achieved its target reserve. And so that gives the GAD some more flexibility about how it levies assessments within the developments here.
So I'm sorry, Eric, are you done or? Okay.
Yeah.
So we shared a lot of information, and before we get into the options that are being considered by the district, we wanted to just pause for a few minutes and see if anybody had any questions that they'd like to have clarified based upon the presentation that both Ryan and Eric made. So if you do, because I'm not seeing anything in the chat box, if you have a question you want to raise your virtual hand, we can go through those questions. And just as a reminder, your virtual hand is at the bottom of your screen under the reactions button. If you click that, you can just do a raise hand, or you can do a smiley face or what. Clapping is good too, Theta. So Theta, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yes. Okay, so on that, I'm gonna lose my voice. On the 8 categories, you went from 8 categories, which reflected the special benefits for each slope and non-slope. But on the maintenance and operations only, while you still have 8 categories, 8 lines, you really only have 4 payment options categories. Why shift from 8 to 4 if it's based on benefits?
Eric, do you want to address that?
So, sure, no, be glad to answer that. Thank you, Theta. So we are still looking at the taking out only the maintenance portion, the maintenance and operations portion of the budget. It is based on, we use the same ratios that we used for just the maintenance and operations portion of the assessment apportionment. And so if you look in the engineer's report, there's two categories. There's what benefit each home's receiving from maintenance and operation. And those do have a different assessment ratios for each of them. So each of those you still get 8 categories with those. They're obviously much lower because you're not contributing to reserve, and you're not taking into account some of the capital improvements, the long-term replacement. So we did look at that as far as the categories, and they're still receiving a slightly larger benefit. If you notice in there, they're much closer in space because it doesn't much closer in dollar value because they're not taking into account that reserve accumulation and that part of the benefit that each of the parcels is receiving. But yeah, you still, even if you weren't collecting a reserve at all, you're still receiving a different benefit based on the frontage of the average frontage of the parcel and where it's located. So there is still something, because part of the GAD's maintenance operation is just taking care of slope repairs and erosion and small things like that do occur. Therefore, you're still getting a greater benefit with the maintenance and operations only. Therefore, we did feel it was defensible to and appropriate to keep the 8 categories.
Okay. Mark, you have your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so there's an elephant in the room that nobody seems to be addressing, and that's reparations to those of us who've been paying toward the reserve for 8, 9, 10 years, and those like the Ridge and Paradise 360 who are coming in benefiting from the reserve. They should be assessed more, but do their share, or we should be, reparations to us that have been paying over the years. Your comments, please.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Mark. I think that's a policy decision that the board could make. I think that's a discussion that needs to be had with the district manager and the board for consideration. So I think that this analysis here that we've completed is looking at and updating the reserve study, the 3 technical documents, and if we've been hard at work at doing that. And if we want to go through the analysis of looking at repayment, I think there's a benefit for us to have a healthy reserve. I think it's good that we've collected 1.5 million to account for that rainy day if we need to utilize that. But that's a policy decision from our board. So if that's the recommendation of the council, the board to look at different alternatives, then I think we'd have to do the technical work to support that. So I think that's we'd have to do that, and that's separate. That's a separate conversation that we can have.
What's the time frame for that? You say you have to do your technical, and when can the board address this?
Yeah, I think one is to identify. I think it's twofold. I think one is identify the reserves based on, there's a slice in time where we've set a reserve. There's a slice of time where we've modified the reserve, or kind of now we're modifying that. So I think it's looking at the difference between the two of those and how much folks have paid into that. So we could, I haven't talked with NGO about doing that calculation. And then separately, it's probably looking at the property and looking at the title. And I think that's a different, company, and that's, I think, a different firm And then also too, making sure we understand the logistics of, if folks have moved out, how are we logistically going to, do that? I think I have to try to, work through that process of
It has to be based because, yeah, a lot of the K, yeah, there's new people that have moved in, and I understand that. It has to be based on when you took title. For me, it was 2012. So somebody else might be, who knows? Anyway.
Yeah. So just so
Cool.
so that I think that's a policy decision from the board, and that would have to be that would be something that they would have to do.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mark, for that question. Rick, you have your hand up.
I'm unmuted now. Yes, let me tag on to what Mark just said, that the concept and the discussion is well within the scope of the ad hoc committee, and it most definitely should be discussed at the ad hoc committee. Both Theta and I are the resident members of that group, and we have not talked about that yet. And it's definitely the board. They make all the decisions, so that's always the correct answer. But definitely that needs to be fully vetted by the ad hoc group, and it's simply done. It's not that hard. Essentially, we're $800,000 over our projected reserve from where we should have been in our 40-year range, achieving the 1.5 after 40 years. So that $800,000 could be redistributed back to those who paid it, and that would not be difficult to come up with. But the actual how do we do that and what does that mean? It does mean that there's going to have to be an assessment that includes a reserve contribution going forward. But we absolutely need to take the people into consideration, because that's why we're here today. That's why the board gave us a mandate to work. One of the mandates is not listed on the slide under the history and stakeholder concerns. 60% of the residents filed grievances with the board when this project started. 60% of the homes here at the time. So it's not a few people were upset. The whole place is upset based on how it went. So we do need to characterize more accurately as we go forward, not that a few of the citizens were concerned. 60% were up in arms, and it was a very, very heated situation. So when we talk about stakeholder concerns, we also need to talk about what the board instructed to be done by Public Works. One was to get a new company, a new geo company, so the numbers could be reassessed. The original number that Eric's company established was $172,000 per year as the estimated goal of expenses only, not reserve contribution, just expenses. And again, that's from their experience. Clearly, our Hill provided a better response than they anticipated, which is good. And in 2018, Eric's company also provided a follow-up report. In that report, they advised the board that the Hill's doing great, and it's doing so well, and you have so much excess money in the reserve, you probably need to reduce your assessment to $854,000. I'm sorry, $854 to each of the homes instead of the $1,159 that they were being charged. That year, the Public Works analyst, who's no longer with us, actually went to the board and said, we need to increase the amount of assessment, not decrease as our geological company recommended. So that's the crux of the concerns that people have, that the administration of this program was so disconnected that even when told by the expert, Eric Harrell's company, that they should reduce the money, they didn't. It was increased. So again, the stakeholders are very upset for very specific reasons, and we do need to acknowledge them as we go along in some fashion, other than a few people were concerned or had issues. The original company is NGO. They provided all the original information, and the original number was again 172. It dropped to 124,000 in the 2018 report, which is good. They identified a better performance, and in our working together on the ad hoc committee, it has now been reduced further to 108 and now further to 74. So we're really honing in on what's going on. We're challenging the numbers. And I apologize if I've stepped on toes in our meetings, but those 60% of the citizens want me to get answers and to request support for things that we do. I believe that's my job and Theta's job, is we're representing the community. We want to help. We're not here to denigrate whatsoever. We definitely want help, but we are challenging the situation to make sure the numbers are real. And that's what we will do at the end, is we will tell our residents that we have come up with a good plan. And as a resident, I want to say that. That's my personal goal, is to let people know we've really done a great job. To that end, it's taken a lot longer to do this than anticipated. And we are coming up on our due date to be able to submit this year's assessment number. And that's coming up very, very quickly. And I don't know that we're going to be done and ready to go. I'm actually concerned that we're holding this meeting before we've actually put all of our stuff to bed. We're still working on it. We're in process. I do appreciate the desire to keep people aware that the process is going, but we do not need to rush the clock. We do not need to rush to an assessment. And that's one of my concerns, is that we do get everything done. If we miss the date, we miss the date. We missed last year's date. We thought we were going to make it last year. We missed it. This year, we may miss it again. But the important part, or the goal, is not to get it done by a date. The goal is to get the right numbers. I want to pay the right amount, whatever that is, whatever we finally come up with, I'm good with that. And literally everybody I've ever talked to is ready to pay whatever we need to pay, but we need to ensure that this is the right number. So to that end, the ad hoc committee is still going. We still have work to do, and we need to get it done as quickly as possible. So if we can make the due date, I'm all for that. But at this point, I don't personally believe we're going to make it based on our track record. I'm hoping we can, but you guys have got a lot to do in the city. I mean, we're just a small little corner. You've got millions and millions and millions of dollars of projects that are going on. This one is our project, so we're concerned about it, but I understand time allocation. With that, I think I'm just about done, but the bottom line is we are making great progress. Our Geo company has really helped fine tune with us. We still have many questions to go for them to answer and to provide additional support. And in plain English too, as we provide all the documents that we've been discussing, plan of control, engineer's report, and the reserve study. Any of you, Mark, John, Steve, all you should be able to look at this document and read it and make sense to you. And we still have areas that we need to improve. So going forward, the committee's still working. We want to get this done as quickly as possible, but we do need to properly frame why we're here. We need to properly frame the process itself and to identify our history. If we don't, people are going to, they're not going to understand that we're serious and that we recognize there's a problem. So again, the first way of fixing a problem is to take ownership of the problem and to identify it and to do so in a constructive way. And that's my goal here, is to be as constructive, but as complete as possible, so that our residents who have no confidence, we have there are 3 residents on this call right now. Last one, there was 1 person on it. We have a hard time getting people to be involved in this because of the lack of credibility, and we need to work on it. That's one of our goals, but we haven't talked about that at the ad hoc committee, so we don't have any track record yet on that. The emails, we could have sent an email to every person in the area here if the purchase of the emails would be done through the registrar of voters. So we have many, many tools, and this is where AIM can step up. I know you got 20, and that's good, but there are 288 homes here, and 20 out of 288, that's nothing. And we've got some resources available to be able to get those. So as we participate together, we can get more people. That's my personal goal. We should have a lot of people on these calls, and I'm slightly embarrassed that we don't. And I apologize for not doing more to be able to get that done. But going forward, working together, we can get more people, we can get more done. We might make the deadline, but we need to be always open and honest and perceived exactly as that. So with that, I'll get out of your way. And you have a question for me on what I've said? Awesome. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Rick. All right, with that, I think we can, if there's no other questions, clarifying questions.
I have one.
Okay,
On that slide you had up there, in doing it, if we only do the maintenance and operation, the last column, is this in preparation to get the reserve down to where it should be for its 12-year life cycle based on that 40-year reserve life? Is that the goal here? To move the reserve, to use up the reserve until it gets to a certain point? And what is that point before we start seeing assessments happen again?
So it's just an option to provide theta, and what it is so the 2022 2023 assessment column, as Eric has alluded to, that's the maximum assessment rate that we could levy. It can be a policy decision of the board and recommendation of to the district manager for us just to cover the baseline administration and operation costs, not to set money aside for the reserve, and not to take care of capital repairs that would need to occur. And that's what that fiscal year 2022, 2023 maintenance and operation only column represents. So that's because we have a new reserve study that says 1.57 is the amount that we should be targeting. And because in our fund balance, we're projected to end the year at 1.5, staff doesn't see the need for us to continue to put money aside for the reserves. Does that make sense, Theta? That's why the maintenance and operation only component would be applicable. So if we were to, like I said, we'll look at this on an annual basis, and the 1.57 amount that's the reserve amount today. But annually, as you're aware, we do this every May, June. We take this, we look at the budget. So that would be the intent, is we would look at it every fiscal year to see how we're trending and how our expenses are.
Okay. And because I was on the last meeting, I think I know where this is heading. Whether we only do the maintenance and operation, or where I think your next slide's going to go, the other part, next 15 minutes, based on what Mark had said, I feel like, and I know this is probably something that's going to have to get into the next fiscal year. This is another project we got to look at based on what Mark is recommending, which is reimbursing people who have paid into this. 52% of the people that live here have funded 98% of the reserve fund. If that is not equalized out, not only were we screwed for the first 12 years, but with only having to pay maintenance and operation, we're getting screwed again. Basically, from what he said, the people that have just newly lived here haven't paid anything into the reserve. And if the reserve is not funded for the next number of years, 10 years, let's say, then not only this, it's a double whammy to the people that have lived here. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I've already done the calculations on my house. Actually, I've done the calculations not specifically for every parcel, but for the entire reserve. And I've got it out on a worksheet. I've sent it to you, Ryan. You've seen it, and I think Eric has it. It's not difficult. The difficulty will come in dissecting the ownership. That's the only thing. And if people didn't pay taxes or anything like that, there's some type of a teeter plan or something that's involved with that. Yeah, but we get an accountant to go in there and do all this stuff. It's not that difficult to make the people that have lived here for 12 years whole. And it would require the reserve to be reduced down to about $630,000. And then everybody pays whatever the figure is. I don't have it in front of me. So it's doable. That's all I have.
Thank you, Theda. Rick, do you have your hand up again? Oh, okay. I'm going to lower your hand for you, if you don't mind. There we go.
So
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, Ryan.
it's okay. So the pertinency of the next slide then may not hold relevant because based on this feedback, but from what I'm understanding, this chart and these amounts are contingent on us being able to adopt that new engineers report and to progress onto the new reserve study, new plan of control. So if the recommendation of the ad hoc committee and the residents is to kind of pause and to hold, I do need to reassess, and I do need to kind of reevaluate what the parameters are and what we need to do. And if it is in fact that we in essence are going back to what the fiscal year 2022 assessment was, which was $398 for the multifamily, or not multifamily, excuse me, the high density parcels, and then the $878 for the single family residentials. That's the current engineer's report. That's the current plan of control. And we would not have hit the $1.7 million in the reserve. So I have to, like I said, I have to reevaluate, reassess if that's the desire of the community. I need to better understand if that's really what we want to do, because like I said, we've worked on putting this together, and we've already, based on the new technical information that we have, these would be the assessments that we would be looking at, is to not levy an assessment, and then also potentially just doing a maintenance and operation only. But that's not, this recommendation in this slide may not be where we're headed. We might be headed to 878 for single family, and then the 439 for the other lots, based on the information that we have. So I think we need to do some more. I think there's more work at hand, I guess, to do. Is the sense I'm feeling, Eric, team, or is there something off base, Eric?
So if, the board could decide to levy anything less than the existing, assessment limit is what you're saying. And right now, those assessment limits. So, you would like to have a full plan going forward as far as, what you're doing, between the reserve study, the engineers report, and the plan of control. But they still, it still would allow for anything under the assessment limit, and it wouldn't affect subsequent years. I mean, it doesn't affect the assessment limit. So, there is some, discretion here, but I understand, the need for wanting, and the board, to making sure they're making decisions on, complete information.
Okay, it looks like, Rick, you put your hand up, your virtual hand up again. Okay, so if you want to unmute yourself. Now, it's actually better to do the virtual hand because it moves you up onto the screen and then we know. So if you want to, ask your question, unmute yourself and ask your question, that'd be great.
Got it, I'm unmuted. This is a great discussion for the ad hoc committee. This is the kind of place where we can tool that up and provide that again as an option. We can come up with 2 options and present those to the board. We can then present, as you've already done, the options to the people and get a people response. We can do a full court press of getting people to come to a meeting and prepare for it and get a large number of people present to be able to get a greater reaction of individuals, not denigrating our 3 residents who are on the line right now, I apologize. But we can get a lot more than that. So we can do it. The numbers are there. That what we would have to do is, like you said, an assessment. Right now, we're looking at $74,000 in fees. We would add approximately $40,000 figure to that. That would account for what the reserve contribution and the capital improvement. So that is the largest number, is 43,000 added to the 74,000, and we're still significantly under where we were. And we have more units that are available. So the numbers are very workable. And again, if we have to do something to take people into account, and I thought that's why the 0 year was being done, is some method of being able to let the residents know, we're trying to help you. We're trying to reduce your burden of your tax. So I thought that was possibly the reason at that point, but that it track annually with the actual expenses is really good. That's a statement I would love to be able to tell people, is going forward annually, the number is going to be reviewed. It may be a little more, maybe a little less, depending on what took place in that prior year. Responsive to the environment is, I think, a good catchphrase for our assessment going forward, that we will respond based upon what actually happens, because we established all the original numbers in anticipation of what could happen. And as a result, that was not managed well, and it got out of control. So we have a giant reserve. So as we talk as a group, I think we're going to come up with some great ideas. We're going to come up with some real numbers. I don't know that it's going to make a geological company happy. I know 15 million would be the best thing in the world to have, so that you totally would be able to handle anything. But the reality of our history and going forward are the items that we are tasked to address. And again, I do appreciate Eric's work in bringing forth the reports that we're still currently working on. But going forward in our next meetings, to finish what we're working on and include the what would it take to do a rebate and get down to move the reserve down to the number where it should be right now, that it was planned to be, and get us back on the 40-year track. Very doable. Our meeting would be very productive, and I think we could knock that out. Again, that would be one option. And I think we would be offering that to the board, an option of getting the money back to the people who paid it, and then going forward with the right numbers, or having just a reduced number and not getting back to the people. I think primarily what we're looking at in the 2 different ideas that I see.
Yeah, just to respond to the, so from a timing perspective and from a next steps level, we do have to have a notice of intent, and I need to send that for council board consideration on June 21st. So we're about a month away from having to do that, and having to make that recommendation with a proposed levy. At that time, that would be we would have, as part of the nexus, the engineer's report, plan and control, go through that adoption process.
Right.
So if we are pivoting and going in a different direction, there is not enough time for us to look at the repayment process. That would have to be something we would take care of subsequent years. That's new work we would have to embark on it in July, through the process of getting this July, August, getting assessment tax rolls done. So that's not something we could get completed before the June 21st notice of intent.
Well, we actually also have the audit. We've done nothing whatsoever on the audit at all, and that was also given to us. So like I'm saying, I don't see that we've got it this year to go. I mean, which is something we'll talk about, but I would much rather we do it right than do it fast. We've had to slow down for various reasons all the way along. And I just don't see us rushing at the end to try and get something under the wire versus giving it all the due consideration that it deserves.
No, that's fair. And I think that's the kind of scenario that I'm describing, where we would, in essence, to get the work completed again, we would levy the same assessment that we did in 21-22. I think that's
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, Rick. I'm gonna mute you now, and I'm going to ask Mark. And if you wouldn't mind lowering, or I'll lower your hand, but you said we don't get it all mixed up. That would be great. Thank you. So I've muted Rick. Where did you go, Mark? We lost you. Oh, there you are. Sorry. If you want to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, so I understand, and Rick, I understand. Okay, so we got going through all this process, and we're not going to make it in the month and whatever is going on about reparations and all this. But one option that is insanity is to go back to last year's assessment. No, no way, no how. And I'll go out door to door myself. That's crazy to go back to 800 and something. No way, no way, no how. Enough said.
No,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that, Mark. And I think that's why if
Yeah.
pending approval, right?
We're on the same page, Ryan.
Pending
agree,
approval
yeah.
of the engineer's
We
report.
can chew gum and walk at the same time. If people want to keep doing these studies, fine, but we can go with your maintenance and operation, for now, and then reconsider for next year. Every year, like you said, we have to evaluate every year, correct?
There's an engineer's report that's going to be put together annually. We have to do this work annually.
Exactly.
So it's the resident decision. I brought these two options because I feel these are the two recommendations I feel comfortable bringing to the board for consideration. But if I'm not going to get support from the community, I don't feel comfortable doing that, and I don't want to go against what the ad hoc committee is recommending. So I hear you, Mark, and we can meet separately offline or with the ad hoc committee to talk this through.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan.
But I understand. I understand that this is the purpose of this discussion is to kind of get this feedback.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing. Wait, go, Eric. Yeah, I just want to ask Mark to lower your hand, please, and put yourself on mute, or I can mute you. That's fine. Oop. Okay, there. Oop. There we go. Okay, so Eric, yeah, please respond. And then Theta would like to ask a question. And Theta, you were doing hands clapping or any of those others. That's fine. If you want to ask a question, I'll understand that that's what you want to do. You're not applauding us or giving a thumbs up. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to Theta's question earlier is because I think I could have answered it a lot simpler, and I don't think I gave a clear answer when she asked about the 8 categories to 4. Yes, we did keep it in this format, Theta, but true, if this is decided that we were only going with maintenance and operations, there would exclusively, if that's the final direction, we would, for the presentation to the board, we would make it 4 categories. So I think we kept these because if there's some hybrid or something like that, but you're correct. If we went with maintenance and operations, we would show 4 different categories and include those. So could have answered it a lot simpler, and apologize for that, not getting it clear the first time.
Okay, Theta, I know you wanted to ask a question, and you are unmuted.
Yeah, I think Mark kind of got it, because I thought maybe I heard something wrong, but evidently I didn't, because all of a sudden the 2008 amount, $878, which we paid this fiscal year 21-22, got thrown out there, and I didn't see how that came up. But because I don't think that should be paid. I think at a minimum, maintenance and operation, but I can certainly agree with option 2 with no assessment, particularly if we are seriously going to look at reimbursing previous years. And so we don't have stuff coming in, and it's kind of a clean cut, and we can see exactly what we have, and we can figure something out from there. I haven't checked my emails lately, but the reports, are you guys saying that the reports are there's a draft at least of them that include this option or these options in them?
No.
Okay.
The engineer's reports that we have online represent the maximum amounts as the previous slides. That's the nexus that the GAD could levy up to.
But if
If we choose from a policy decision perspective to do something different, that's a policy decision that staff and the district manager can make.
Okay, okay, so what I've got is what we've got.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And okay, I guess that's it for right now. And I do agree that the issue of reimbursement, or at least looking at making the reserve fund fair across the board where it should be, I completely agree. It should be pushed off till after the new year. And that's a whole nother can of worms we're going to be opening up. So that needs to be pushed. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Theta. Okay, so it seems like we kind of jumped into what Ryan was going to present. So do we want to go into, it sounds like we've had a pretty good discussion around what but I just want to, I guess, can you go back to that one slide one more time, the one prior to this? Oh, there, yeah. Ryan, did you want to maybe just, no? Okay.
No, it's okay. I appreciate that, Gladys. I think if the other folks on the call, I wanted to make sure that they heard the information, if they have some questions or comments, to make that now. But yeah, we could roll it up. We could
Okay.
wrap it up, Gladys.
So I do want to just pause for a second because we do have two attendees who haven't made any comments, and I just want to make sure that if they do have any questions or comments that they'd like to make about the two options for the assessment, love to give them that opportunity. So I'm just going to take a little pause there for a second and see. Okay, so we did have one from Jose Gano. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your last name. For an immediate concern, the grass on the hillside have not been cut back yet. Does anyone know when that will be done? The fire season is here and we want to make sure we avoid damages to the homes in the community, especially if there are current funds for this maintenance. Not sure if this was discussed in prior meetings. Ryan, do you have a response?
I do have a response. So yeah, we've been working. I know one of the concerns that that's a constant issue where fire season is upon us here. So we are working with a contractor to get that work completed in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Jose, for bringing that up. We really appreciate that. So just a little pause for a moment, just give anyone else a chance. You're welcome, Jose. Okay, well, with that, oh, yes, Rick?
Yeah, just following up on the grass cutting, are we going to be using Jeff, or are we going to be using the contractor that Eric has identified at $6,000, I think $6,000 versus Jeff at $11,000 that we've been paying?
Right. So for this current year, for the work that we have to get completed in advance of the fire season, we're gonna have to go with Anselmo, our service contractor. We couldn't get the work scheduled in on time in order to make it for this prior to this fire season. So that's where we're at, Rick.
I thank Eric for coming up with the bid was $6,000. I think $6,000, could be $6,500. I think, Eric.
Yes, that was what we paid for other GADs for that type of work.
Well, what we are paying is $11,000 per cut out there for the 9 acres that's getting cut. And we did it twice a year previously. And I think we're only looking at once a year. Is that correct, Eric?
Yes, this year will be once, Rick.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Stephen Underwood mentioned that he has no comments at this time. So thank you for letting us know, Stephen. Otherwise, I'd keep that pause button going. Okay, so with that, if we want to go to the final slide, which just talks a little bit about what the next steps are. And Angelica, if you wouldn't mind just putting the website in the chat box so that if anybody wants to just click it, that will give them the direct access to the website, and then they can save it in their bookmark. Thank you, Angelica. Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, so thanks, Gladys. I realize we have a little bit of a typo on this slide. So this is the final town hall meeting that we're having to kind of get feedback on kind of the work we've been completing with NGO. So pending further discussion we'll have with the ad hoc committee in the next couple of weeks, we'll be taking an item for board consideration in June. And the next time for that public hearing will be on July 19th. excuse me. Yes, July 19th to get that. I looked at my calendar, apologies. July 19th, and all the documents that we have, the draft copies of the engineer's report and the plan and control reserve study are on our website. So please, as you take a moment of peruse that and see if you have any questions and comments about that, we'd love to have that. So yeah, with that, Angelica,
Okay.
is there
great.
contact information on the other one, Gladys?
We put it, yeah, we put it in the chat box.
Perfect.
So in the chat box, you'll see where you can email for additional questions, or you can call, and it's also here. And Angelica, were you going to put the website as well in the chat box, please? Thank you. So we'll just do that really quickly. But with that all said, and with Angelica typing as quickly as she can, are there any final questions that, there we go, we got the website in there. So any final questions that anybody has, or should we let you go? Okay, well, again, we really appreciate your time that you've spent with us, your comments. It's always nice to see very involved community members. We really, really appreciate it. We always think it's a good thing for the community if community members are involved and aware. So thank you so much for participating, and we hope that you have a good rest of your evening, and we will let you go. Goodbye.